The film opens with a German Nazi soldier named Clemens, who is getting ready to board a train. Before he leaves, he meets his wife, Catherine, who tells him that she is pregnant. Clemens is overjoyed, knowing he will soon have a child. He then greets his young daughter, Lisa, and promises that he will return in time to celebrate Christmas together.
Nein, wird nicht gebrochen.
Los!
But that journey never happens. Clemens is suddenly accused of committing war crimes by the Soviets. He is found guilty of participating in actions against partisans, and in 1945 he is sentenced to 25 years of forced labor in a gulag camp in Siberia. A journey he never chose, but one he must now survive. This is as far as my feet will carry me. Soon, Clemens finds himself packed inside a crowded train, sitting on the cold floor among other prisoners. The cold is unforgiving, and the men take turns pressing against each other just to stay warm. They are given only thin clothing and meager food. Many prisoners do not survive the long journey across the continent. At one stop, every prisoner is ordered to carry 4 pieces of firewood. Clemens, exhausted and half lost in his thoughts, begins hallucinating images of his wife and child. In his daze, he accidentally picks up more than he should, and the Soviet guards punish him harshly for it.
Блядь, я рассказал по 4 порядка! Следующий, по 4!
Meanwhile, back at home, a mail carrier delivers a letter to Clemens's house. His daughter Lisa runs excitedly to give it to her mother, hoping it is from her father. But the letter is from the Red Cross. They explain that although Clemens is listed as missing, there are no records of any trial in Russia. In other words, they have no information at all. By this time, Catherine has already given birth to their son. Back in Siberia, the prisoners finally leave the train and begin a brutal trek through the freezing landscape. They must walk nearly 2,000 miles to reach the labor camp. Many collapse along the way, unable to endure the cold. Some simply freeze where they fall. When they finally arrive, the prisoners are lined up for inspection. As Clemens stands in formation, he hears the sound of a ship in the distance and realizes there must be a port nearby. One of the officers, Lieutenant Kamenev, tells the prisoners that only the strongest will survive here. This is a forced labor camp in Siberia where German prisoners of war are held. There are no fences and not many guards, but no one has ever escaped. The reason is simple. Even if someone manages to break free, they would be walking straight into temperatures of minus 40 degrees in the Arctic Circle with no food and no warmth. Out there, a person would freeze or starve in a matter of hours. But one soldier refuses to accept that fate. Clemens is determined to escape and return home to his wife and family. Before long, an opportunity appears. Clemens quietly follows a conveyor route and slips out. He places wooden planks beneath the wheels of a coal cart, climbs inside and waits as it begins to move. As the cart rolls forward, Clemens looks up at the starry night sky. For the first time in a long time, he allows himself to smile. In his mind, he can already see the road home. But the moment is short-lived. The cart suddenly jerks to a stop, blocked by a wooden barrier outside. Clemens tries to see what is happening, but his Soviet guard spots him. He is caught and taken back. The punishment for attempted escape is severe. Clemens is thrown into an open-air underground cell. Rain pours on him without mercy, day and night. The cold cuts into him, but somehow he endures it for 3 days and 3 nights. However, that is not the end of it. When the prison director finally orders him released, he gives Clemens a warning. His fellow prisoners are waiting. Only when Clemens returns to the mind does he understand what that means. The other prisoners, starving and exhausted, stand in 2 lines holding heavy clubs. Because Clemens tried to escape, all of them were denied food for 3 days. Hungry and furious, they now see him as the reason for their suffering. Weak and unable to defend himself, Clemens is beaten relentlessly until he collapses. After the beating, Clemens is brought to the infirmary. The doctor treating him is also a prisoner, but unlike most others, he shares Clemens' desire for freedom. He respects Clemens for having the courage to try escaping in the first place, and he takes extra care in tending to his injuries. Clemens eventually begs the doctor to help him escape again. The doctor warns him that no one has ever survived an escape from a camp this deep in the Siberian Arctic. Anyone who tries usually ends up dead. Then he reveals something even more disturbing. Even those who never attempt to flee are slowly dying as well. The prisoners spend every day mining heavy metals, and years of exposure to lead poisoning guarantees a slow and painful death. Knowing that death is unavoidable either way, the doctor suggests that Clemens take his chances and try again. With quiet determination, the doctor decides to help him. He removes his own coat, gathers fur-lined boots and warm clothing from a cabinet, and tells Clemens to put them on. He explains that there are emergency food caches hidden along the railway tracks. He also hands Clemens a weapon and tells him to use it if he has to. All of these supplies were originally prepared for the doctor's own escape. But just 1 month earlier, he learned he had cancer. In his weakened state, he knows he would never survive the bitter cold. He then gives Clemens a small lunchbox with his home address written on it, asking him to tell his family what became of him if Clemens is fortunate enough to make it out alive. With that, Clemens sets out once again under the cover of night, stepping into the endless snow. The next morning, the prison director discovers that Clemens is gone and rushes to the infirmary. He quickly realizes the doctor sacrificed his own future for the sake of another. Meanwhile, Clemens pushes forward through the vast frozen wilderness with unwavering determination. The director orders a search across a 30-mile radius. Days pass, and no one finds any trace of him. Most assume Clemens has frozen to death, but the director is convinced he is still alive. He refuses to stop and instructs the soldiers to widen the search even further. On the 9th day of his escape, Clemens suddenly becomes aware of a sled coming up behind him. Instinct takes over, and he tries to run. But in his panic, he drops his backpack. The sled seems to close in fast. He slips, falls, and collapses onto the snow. But when it passes over him, he realizes nothing has touched him at all. The entire chase was only a hallucination brought on by exhaustion in the cold. Surrounded by endless ice and snow, Clemens feels lost. His food is almost gone, and he has no idea how much longer he can keep moving. In desperation, he sinks to his knees and prays for anything that could help him survive. But in this barren Arctic landscape, there is nothing but white in every direction. With no choice left, he forces himself to keep moving for days, dragging his weakened body through the frozen wasteland. Eventually, his strength gives out and he collapses, slipping into a faint halfway between sleep and unconsciousness. Through the haze, he hears a sound. He struggles to follow it, and there, not far away, he spots a seal resting on the ice. To him, it looks like the only chance he has left. He pulls out his weapon with shaking hands and fires several shots. By sheer luck, one of them hits. He cuts open the seal and pushes his frozen feet inside to warm them before treating the frostbite. He melts its fat in a small pan and rubs it onto his skin, wrapping his legs with cloth strips to help them heal. It is crude, but it keeps him alive. After resting, Clemens continues on through the endless snow. To keep his mind from slipping away, he talks to himself and uses a compass to stay on course. Days later, he sees something he has not seen in months: a small tree. Overwhelmed, he walks toward it and hugs it tightly. This small sign of life means he has finally crossed out of the Arctic Circle after 2 long months. Meanwhile, the prison warden refuses to give up. Search efforts continue to expand. Wanted notices are posted and checkpoints are set up, but Clemens keeps moving. Now traveling through forest, Clemens is suddenly caught in a violent snowstorm. The wind is so strong it lifts him off the ground, snapping even the strongest trees. One massive tree crashes down behind him and pins him to the ground. Just when it seems like the end, 2 passing gold miners, Semyon and Mattern, spot him and free him from the fallen tree. From that point on, the 3 men travel together, supporting one another as they push forward through the harsh wilderness. When the seasons changed, the 3 men decided to travel downriver on a makeshift raft. The journey starts peacefully. They admire the landscape and share stories from their lives, finding comfort in each other's company. But the river soon turns violent. The current grows too strong to control. The raft tips, and Semyon is thrown into the freezing water. Seeing him being pulled under, Clemens doesn't hesitate. He jumps in after him, fighting the current with everything he has. After a struggle in the churning water, he manages to drag Semyon back to the riverbank. Meanwhile, Mattern has taken the raft and continued on alone. When he returns to their shelter, he assumes Semyon has drowned. Believing his companion is dead, he steals all of Semyon's valuables, including his gold. But just as he is preparing to disappear, Semyon returns. Faced with betrayal from someone he trusted, Semyon makes a hard decision and ends Mattern's life with a single shot. Now only Clemens and Semyon remain. They pack what little they have and continue their journey. But winter arrives and the path becomes harder with every step. Clemens tries to share the load with Semyon, but Semyon mistakes the gesture as an attempt to steal his gold. In a moment of fear and suspicion, he strikes Clemens with his bag, sending him tumbling down a mountainside. Clemens loses consciousness. When he awakens, he is surrounded by a pack of wolves closing in. Weak and barely able to move, he scrambles up a small tree. The wolves tear at his clothing and snap at his legs. The tree begins to give way, and just as it breaks, gunshots echo across the snowy forest. Shepherds from a nearby village have arrived and drive the wolves away. They bring Clemens to their village and care for him. After so long in the cold and alone, the warmth and kindness he receives feel almost unreal. He forms a genuine bond with them and begins to recover quickly. But word about his escape eventually reaches the village. Knowing the search parties are getting closer, Clemens has no choice but to keep moving. Before he leaves, the shepherds give him food and supplies. They also give him a hunting dog, loyal and strong, to accompany him on the road ahead. With his new companion at his side, the long journey home feels a little less lonely. And so, man and dog continue traveling together for an entire year. One day, Clemens and his loyal dog arrive at a lumber mill. The dog, hungry from the long journey, wanders toward the workers in search of food, but they chase it away. When Clemens calls out to the animal, some of the workers suddenly recognize him. The owner of the mill pretends to be kind. He offers Clemens food and something to drink, and even arranges for him to board a train headed back to Germany. With home finally within reach, Clemens can't help but smile. He believes the long nightmare is almost over. But what he doesn't know is that the mill owner has already reported him. At the train station, the prison warden is waiting with a group of soldiers. Fortunately, Clemens notices the unusual atmosphere just in time and tries to evade them, weaving between the train cars. But at the last moment, the warden catches him. Just when everything seems lost, the faithful dog leaps in, attacking the warden with fierce determination. The dog's loyalty buys Clemens one final chance to run. Then a gunshot rings out behind him. The dog is killed. Clemens cannot stop to mourn. He forces himself to keep running. In desperation, he climbs onto an overhead bridge and leaps onto a moving train, escaping once again. Time passes. It is now 1952. Clemens, tired and unrecognizable with tangled hair and worn clothes, stares longingly at a plate of food through a shop window. But he is chased away. He approaches a pastry stand where friendly girls greet him warmly, yet he has no money to pay. Clemens quietly walks away. Suddenly, a kind woman breaks off a piece of flatbread and gently tells her young son to give it to Clemens. Surprised by the boy's kindness, Clemens hesitates for a moment before realizing he is holding warm, freshly baked bread in his hands. But this small act of compassion catches someone else's attention, a Jewish man standing nearby. Clemens takes the bread and heads to the nearest church. There he kneels and prays with his hands clasped, pouring out everything he has held inside for years. The Jewish man follows, quietly watching from a distance. Instead of turning Clemens in, he approaches him. He recognizes the look of someone who has survived captivity because he was once a prisoner of war himself. He takes Clemens to his home, where Clemens is finally able to wash, rest, and shave. After so long wandering in hardship, he begins to look like himself again. The man then gives him something priceless, a passport and travel documents. Clemens is overwhelmed with gratitude. With these papers, Clemens makes his way to the Soviet border. After inspection, the guards allow him to pass. He holds in his excitement, his heart racing as he steps forward, feeling freedom for the first time in years. But when he reaches the middle of the bridge, a bright light shines on him. Standing there is the prison warden. He has been waiting. Clemens turns back and realizes he is still technically on Soviet land. The warden still has the authority to take him back. Clemens feels the weight of all his years of struggle pressing down on him. It seems like everything he endured was for nothing. But then, something unexpected happens. The warden steps aside. He allows Clemens to continue. After witnessing Clemens' determination, his endurance, and his will to live, the warden chooses to let him go.
Ich hab dich besiegt.
After surviving every obstacle, Clemens finally reaches home. He watches his family quietly through the window, overcome with emotion. His wife and daughter are getting ready to go to church. Clemens follows behind them as they walk. His daughter senses something and slowly turns around. When she sees him, she stops in disbelief. Then she runs into his arms. The two embrace tightly. His wife comes closer, gently touching his face, tears in her eyes. The moment feels unreal, like a dream made real after years of pain. And there, reunited at last, the family holds each other and cries together. So the moral of the story is sometimes love is the only thing that keeps a person alive. And even when the world forgets you, the people waiting at home still hold your place in their hearts.